Welcome to the Profits in Pajamas podcast. I'm Danielle Detiege, or Coach Danni D, and I help women to create luxury brands by creating processes and tightening their branding. This is where we talk about how to build your business in a way that allows you to work with ease and enjoy your life. My happy space is spending as much time as humanly possible in my pajamas, and I want to help others to find their happy space while still running profitable businesses. So get comfortable and let's dig in. Hello and welcome to the Profits in Pajamas podcast. I am your host, Coach Danni D. Always here to help you find that holistic success that includes your personal life as well as your business. This episode is a very special episode. This is going to be our third anniversary episode. And each year we bring back the guests that were with us throughout the year so they can share just some insights, some more of their wisdom, and just, celebrate them for being our great guest experts throughout the year. So I want to welcome each of you. I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself before we start the discussion. So on my screen, the person directly to my left is Catherine. So Catherine, if you kick it off for us, just remind us who you are, your business, where you're located, and we can go from there.
Okay, well, hi everyone. All you lovely ladies on the podcast. My name is Catherine Swain. I'm a marriage and family therapist in New Orleans. My office is uptown. I work virtually as well. Um, the office name is Divine Light Counseling, and I offer individual as well as couples counseling.
Welcome back, Catherine. So I'm gonna just let y'all go next. Whoever wants to go next, because I feel like the people move.
Well, it looks like I'm to the left of Catherine on my screen, so I will go next. Sheila Higgs Burkhalter. I currently serve as the Vice President for Student Affairs at Winthrop University. That's my 9 to 5. My calling is in the space of coaching and motivational speaking, and I do that under Shigsby Coaching. I'm located in Rock Hill, South Carolina, and I'm very pleased to be with all of you.
Thank you.
I'll jump in. Hello, ladies, and thank you, Coach Danni D, for having us again. I'm Shate Hayes. I am originally from Houston. I live in the Atlanta area. I'm a creative strategist and a content producer through my company, Career Steward. I create content and programs to help creatives and nonprofits grow their businesses.
Thank you. Thank you.
I am Shadana Chaney, and I have an organization called The Influential Life, where I work as a confidence and career coach. I specifically work with college students to help them build their confidence and develop soft skills in the workforce. And just recently, I emerged into executive coaching. I do have a background in human resources, so now I'm working with executives to build leaders in the workforce to foster a healthy working environment. So,
Awesome.
And I am Salvant. I'm an author, advocate, and advisor to women and children. One of my missions is to redefine motherhood to include self-care and self-compassion. So we raise children with realistic expectations from their moms. And I do that work under Time with I.
All right. Thank you. Welcome, ladies. So, as we are entering this new year, the first question I want to throw out to the group is, what is your biggest lesson that you learned from last year?
I'll start us off. I don't know if it was necessarily the thing that I learned last year so much as it was seeds that were planted that finally sort of, you know, bore fruits. And it finally clicked for me last year. And it just kept emerging over and over. And I think we probably talked about this too in our conversation, but the fact that there is no one way to make something happen. So
Mm.
I've spent all this money, like too much to even, I'm embarrassed to say, paying coaches to help me build my business, like help me figure out the way to make my business happen. And it just dawned on me that none of them quite worked for me because it's not me, right? And so finally learned to sort of pay more attention to my intuition and then to take those strategies and best practices that make sense for my business and put all of that together to make that work for my people. That's the way to go. There is no one way. There's the way that works best for who I am and what I'm doing.
I absolutely love that. I've been on that kick a lot this year, because I feel like that is a reason why a lot of times we get stuck because we're trying to force something and it doesn't quite make sense. Like the principles are there, but like we have to have that sense of self to know what part is for us and what part is not, and like when to, push back. And then sometimes I feel like I have to go back to my friend group and be like, okay, hear me out. Am I being stubborn in this situation, or is this just really like a hard line in the sand? Because I never want to like not be open to something new, but also I don't want to put on something that doesn't belong to me, if that makes sense. So what are some other lessons that we learned in this past year?
I would say for me, and excuse if there's noise in the background,
Yeah, that's
it's a
fine.
co-working space. We hear a lot often about having multiple streams of income. And so you hear that often, but I thought because I work as a career coach and I specifically work with college students. And so at the beginning of the year, my business was booming. It was booming. And then the summer came, the students were out, it was no work, income was dry, the school year started, it was booming again. And then the break came, like Christmas and Thanksgiving, and then it was dry again. So it was like, okay, I need to decide on what else I can do other than career coaching, like have another avenue where I can constantly be bringing money in every single month versus, some months this peak season. So it's like as a business owner, it's important to have streams of income coming in every single month, just on a consistent basis. So that's something that I've learned. And I think that's where the executive coaching is coming in because I kind of pitched that service to an organization and they bid, and then I did it, and then they loved it. And I was like, okay, this can be extra income. And then when I started doing executive coaching, I realized I was able to make a lot more money and not work as hard. So it was like I was working smarter and not harder. So
Yeah, I love that. I love that. And I love the fact that it was something that was in your wheelhouse and in your strengths. Because I think that sometimes like people will say, oh, well, I got this other source of income. And then you're like, where did that come? Like, like it's just like out of left field. And you're like, huh? Like, where did that come from? And,
random stuff. Yeah.
sometimes it's because they saw someone else be successful at it. But I think
Right.
when we play on our strengths is when we have the most success. Like there's
Yeah.
something there, already in you that you can capitalize on.
I agree. Playing on strengths. And I'll just add one more thing. Like for me, I work with passion. And that's what I try to tell a lot of startup business owners. Like you have to work for passion. My cousin was calling me, he's just starting a business. And he was like, this business can make me a lot of money. And I was like, yes, but are you passionate about doing? Because, being a business owner, it gets hard. But if you don't have that passion, you're not going to have that drive and that momentum to keep going. I've been in business for about 6 years and I have had some rough times, but it was the passion that kept me going. So if you don't have that passion, then you won't keep going.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, oh yes. That's a gem right there. Because, people jump in. I think a lot of times, like again, they see, so and so made $1 million doing X, Y, and Z. well, for everybody that made $1 million, there's like a million more people that made $0. Like, it's not that that particular industry is so lucrative. It's that person's their drive, their discipline that is making the difference in them making that money. Because I promise you, whatever the feel is, you can go post it right now, and there's somebody gonna be complaining. There's no money in. Okay, somebody's making the money, but yeah, I totally agree. You have to be connected to your work.
I think mine is kind of related to what's already been shared. And what I would say is one of my biggest lessons, or maybe it was a reaffirmed lesson, is that, to let my instincts guide me when it comes to the things that I am doing. Other people don't always understand. I'm well past the point of trying to help them understand. I just need to walk it out. And so there were a few times this year where people question, like, why are you doing that? Or why are you headed in that direction? Or what is that about? And sometimes I'm not even completely clear. I just feel compelled to move in a direction. And I follow that compulsion. And then typically I don't know until the end or maybe the middle, where it's headed. And it usually opens another door that I didn't anticipate, or leads to another stream of income, or cultivates another set of relationships that will take me places and spaces that I never anticipated. And so I am leaning into that more in 2025 to really let my instincts and my values guide me.
I love that. That is beautiful.
And I
That is
think for
beautiful.
me, similarly, it's a kind of reaffirmation. But one of my favorite quotes is that there's no valedictorian of life, right?
Mm.
And so when our accountability group met at the for our last wrap up call and looked at what we had accomplished and given ourselves grades over different areas, that again, it's perfectly fine not to have all A's because there is no valedictorian. And when you are working in this area, you have to let something else go. And so it's just being intentional about that and knowing it. So then you're not feeling guilty about not getting X, Y, and Z accomplished in this one area when you made all of these leaps and bounds in another area. So that just really helps me with appreciating my successes and not just sitting here kind of, floundering in, oh, but I didn't do this or that.
I think a lot of times we have a tendency to, when things didn't go the way we wanted them to go, we look at them in a vacuum. And, that's what I just heard out of what you said, Ty. It's like, no, there's only a certain amount of time, right? And so I didn't do this thing, but I did all of these other things. But we don't look at it like that. We just look at like I didn't do. And so I really, really love that. And I really, like you said, like the other thing is nobody else is tracking this but you. Like nobody else is like sitting there like, well, she said that by this time she was gonna do this thing. Like everybody else is still trying to like keep track of their own to-do list. So nobody is like tracking this but you, and you have the ability to change the timetable, because I like to remind people at this time of year, like a lot of times, December 31st comes, and if you didn't finish it, then that's the end of it. Like it's really not. Like you can keep working on that thing. You can like finish it on, January 15th. It's gonna be okay. It'll
Mm-hmm.
be fine, But yeah, I absolutely love that. I like that lesson.
I wanted to come in and say real quick, I think for me, it also wasn't quite a lesson. It was more so just I took this year to focus on my health.
Mm.
Um, and within that came some lessons about myself, like just being able to learn more about myself, being able to put a name to things that like I just thought were there or just thought were random quirks. And it's like, no, that's actually a gift of yours. And you should probably like really feed into that. And so with that being said, that has actually led to different changes in the way that I think about things or even do certain things even within my own practice or the way I look at things just in the world. So yeah.
I think I think it's so funny that the things that we think are like quirky about ourselves are like the things that other people tend to admire about us or like seek us out for. And I think if I were to say, yeah, probably not a lesson, but I think that that's been kind of like the focus that I've had this year is leaning into that, leaning into that idea of it being a superpower as opposed to um just something that makes me different. Like, and that different is not bad. Different is what makes us authentic. And I feel like for me, the more that I lean into that, the more freeing it is. Like, I think that people often view vulnerability as a negative or like are scared of it. But for me, it's like that is the thing. You know what I'm saying? Like that is the thing that has been most freeing for me because it sounds horrible, but I don't care. Like I honestly do not care at this point. And so it keeps me from being in a position of feeling like I have to show up a certain way or censor this or overthink that. Like I can just be. I can just be in the moment and just be and be fine with that. So, um, and forgive me if I say it wrong, Nisla.
Yes, it's Nisla. Nisla.
Nesla. And I said it probably 20 times right before you got on the call. Um,
Good.
I just get nervous every time I look at it. Nesla, I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself. Did I say it right that time?
It's okay. I'm giving you grace. It's Nisla. Nisla. Nisla.
Nisla.
Nisla. Hmm.
Nisla. All right.
Hmm.
Nisla, go ahead and introduce yourself. The other ladies have introduced themselves, and we're just going around answering questions. And the first question was, what was the biggest lesson that you learned this year?
We got time. Oh my gosh. So introduce myself. Hello, beautiful ladies. My name is Nisla Love. I got like so many, hats on. But what I bring to the table is I like to say that I help people grow and think outside the box when it comes to their wealth. And I do that through tax planning. And so I have the privilege of doing that and helping so many small business owners, and it's predominantly women, helping them grow and just expand and learn more about what business looks like and not to think of it as a hustle or a job, but a lifestyle and transforming that mindset and just allowing to see what God does in their lives.
Awesome, awesome. So, if you had to pick one lesson that you learned this year,
Um, one lesson, oh gosh, this has been really heavy on my heart, is to really be mindful of how I show up and how to make a greater impact and not so worry about money. As in business, we're in business to make money, to make profits, no pun intended to your platform. But I mean, we're all about building wealth and growing. But the thing is, we got to change our mindset to not just making money, but receiving money and how we're gonna distribute that and have an impact and help people.
I love that. I love that. And I think a lot of times, like you said, we focus on the money, but I feel like when we focus on the vision
Hmm.
and the execution of the vision, the money comes.
Yes.
Sometimes we can, not to say that we shouldn't think about the money, but sometimes if we put the money first before the purpose,
Mm-hmm.
um, we especially those of us that are like, in that coaching realm, a lot of times people want to, throw out that word scammy. It starts to feel that way,
It does.
when
It does. It does. I mean, but and that's one thing we have to realize. It's okay to want money.
right.
It's okay to be wealthy. It's okay to have abundance. I mean, that's what we're created to. We're creators. And if you're a creator, you're going to get that. And so I think what it is when we lose focus and we don't realize that it's greater than the monetary things. And so, yeah, just being focused and being able to really hone it, like, why are you here? Like, what are you doing? Like, because I always believe that what we, what we have done, what we have created, what have we experienced is never for us,
Yeah.
never for us. And so if we think about how we're going to make an impact and from generation to generation to generation, that just blows your mind. Then money is like, wow, nothing.
Yeah. And I think, like, to further that point, like, the money should be a means to an end. In a sense of, like, a lot of times, we can set an arbitrary financial goal, right? And we decide, okay, I'm going for that goal. But what does that mean? Like, what does that mean in your life? In sometimes the goal itself, like, I'm just thinking about myself, like with my balloon business, I wanted to take it a certain place. And then I started thinking about it and I'm like, I can totally do it. I know how to get to that dollar amount. But I
Mhm.
also know that hitting that particular dollar amount is going to require me sacrificing parts of my life that I don't want to. And so then that made me rethink that
Mhm.
number. And it made me think about, okay, I want this to, maintain, the profitability of this. I want to
Right.
maintain this lifestyle. So I need to have, income coming in. Money's not bad, but
Mhm.
my relationship to an arbitrary number change.
Right. Yeah, because when you make that, say like you make that number, then now what?
Right.
Now what? And you could still make that money, but you still have that balance. You still have the things in your life and you put those systems in place. And one of the things that we all know as entrepreneurs and business owners, delegation is key to everything and system and letting go. Last year was just like, I let go, got burned, got let go, got burned. And so you just like, oh, here we go again, God. But just having that ability to say, you know what, I let go and let him just do the rest and just let him do the rest. But you could, I mean, one of the things that I've been sitting on the last, if you have that number, say everybody say, okay, I have a number, I want to make six figures, seven figures. Can you just imagine that what you're doing, the gift that God has given you, that you could help thousands with that one number multiplied by the thousands? So we set on, like you said, on a goal, like, okay, this goal should be, I want to make six figures. I want to make my 3K, 5K, whatever it is. Can you imagine that how you can help thousands, not just one, not just a year, a month, a day, just being around people that that is tangible, seen it, lived it, walked it, that they make that a day, a week, an hour. And we're so focused, I want to do it a year.
Yeah. 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 You're absolutely right. I mean, the sky's the limit. I just spoke to a friend and she was talking about this project that she had in her mind for a long time. And she, had this vision of her role in this project is like her being like the host of this thing or whatever. And now it is unfolding and she is like producing it.
Awesome.
And, we just had a conversation about, how sometimes we can't even walk into the vision because we're not open to what God sees for us. Like, we see this small corner and
Mhm.
God sees something
Yeah.
much more than that. And because we are stuck on that little corner, We gotta move out the way, ladies.
Move out.
We're not able to see
Yeah.
that bigger picture. And so um yeah, so I've, been kind of mindful of that too, as far as my grandmother used to say all of the time, like when she would pray, she'd say, God's will be done.
Hmm.
And I've been leaning heavy into that
Hmm.
this year
Yeah.
in
Yep.
the sense of like, we can, because I asked her one day, why does she say that? And she told me, she said, because we can't tell God what to do.
No, we can't.
And sometimes we, in our idea of planning, we're legit telling him like, yeah, no, like this specifically. And he like, no, I know how to write. I know how to I know how to write. I don't need you to hold a pen. Like you can just put it down. Like you can't even
Yeah.
fathom what I, have in store. So that has also been just the yielding.
I heard this lady the other day. I was listening, and she said, and it resonated in my spirit. She said, "God is my business coach."
Mm,
I was like, it sounded like cliche, but it just went in my spirit, just like, if I need anything, I just go to him. If I need direction, I go to him. I mean, it's like being in tune with the spirit. Like if you act, should I talk to this person? Isn't he going to coach you and tell you, don't talk to this person? Don't take that sale? No matter how it looks, no matter how green, how big it is, isn't he going to tell you, lead you, and guide you? God is my
absolutely.
business coach. And so that's what I'm leaning in this year moving forward, because it's like everything green is not green. Everything good is not God. And I want to be on his side.
Yeah. It kind of brings me back around to what Shate was saying. Like before you got on the call, she was talking about um just like, spending money with different coaches and doing all these different things and it not really fully um aligning.
Yeah.
And that's the thing is like there's so much knowledge and information out there and I'm, an eternal learner. I love, to learn and grow, but at the end of the day, I have to still go sit and be
Mhm.
like, okay, I got all this information. Now help me sort this out
Right.
because, again, everything that's brought to you is not for you.
Right.
And you have to be willing sometime to walk away from stuff that looks really, really good, but
Been
is
there.
not, I've had people say, like, I can't believe you. Okay. I mean, I don't have the answer to you, so it's cool. But, you know, I've had the benefit though sometimes to see how the thing unfolded and realize that, you know what, you dodged a bullet. Like that was not the opportunity that it appeared to be when it was
Mhm.
presented to you. Or sometimes it's not that it wasn't a great opportunity, it wasn't the opportunity for me.
Yeah. And you know what always goes back to me is my peace. That's priceless. Because you'd be like, oh, should I do this? And then you do it, and then you feel yucky, you feel dirty. But and then you have to explain yourself, and then you have to pant that peace. That peace is so priceless.
Absolutely. Any more thoughts before I throw a different question out?
I think that's it. Thanks for allowing me to share.
Oh no, of course.
Oh,
Okay, so what was the most helpful tip that you received this year?
Feel me?
Whomever wants to answer.
Oh, okay. I was like, oh my God.
Don't all answer at the same time now.
Wow.
Any good tips that y'all picked up on this year?
Business tips, life tips, doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. Either one is relevant.
Mm.
I'll share a tip, but it's also something that I've learned, and it's kind of talking towards Nisla, I hope I pronounced that right, last point when she said, "May God your coach." And I have been intentionally doing that for the past year or two. And I found that like supernatural opportunities come. Like when I first started my business, I was going to so many networking events. I was on boards. I had started my own networking event. It was like a full-time job for me. But the Bible teaches you to lean not on your own understanding. And when I really like verbally dedicated my business to God, it was like, I'm failing, I give it to you. And then I started leaning on him. I started having opportunities just come to me supernaturally to the point where I go to an event, I go to the bathroom, like I come out of the bathroom stall, and like the lady who's washing her hands next to me, there's an opportunity with her to connect with her, you know? I mean, just literally supernatural opportunities. It was just amazing. And I just wanted to share that. So to that point, when you do make God your coach, it makes a difference. So
I love that. Whew. Half of y'all on here I met because God said, go tell that lady that she gonna be on your podcast. I'm just that's 100% real. If he says it, then I do it. And that's the reality of, and some people who've never been on a podcast before and like they like looking at me like dead headlights, and I'm like, look, you're gonna have to figure it out because God has said so. So I mean, I know you're nervous, but we're gonna work it out together because this is what he has said and this is what we about to do. So yeah, no, I think the more like this year was my year of faith. And I also say like peace be still. Like because it was kind of like, there were several, times this year that like it felt like the whole world was like everything was just happening around me. And I feel like God was like telling me, if you are faithful, you will remain calm in this season. And is, gotten to the point of like even being weird because I'm like, so we just gonna just set the world on fire. That's just what we doing right now. Okay. All right. But you told me it's gonna turn out good in the end. So I'm gonna just, I'm gonna just go with that and I'm gonna just lean into it. So I do think that there's definitely like something there as far as because we can say we faithful, but faithful on a good day ain't the same as faithful when things are not, faith is, tested when things are not going great, and being able to understand that there's something greater at play, and not always knowing how it's gonna come together, but like the old folks say, he always on time. Like, it's not our time. Cause I keep telling them the mortgage is gonna stay due on the first, sir. It's always due on the first. I don't know why you want wait till the 31st to start talking about it, but 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 it's still, it all works out. It all, comes together the way that it's supposed to. But yeah, sometimes we gotta sit in uncomfortable to get there.
Yeah, it's bringing up, I guess, trust for me, right? All of this is really reinforcing kind of what I said before about alignment and intuition and that part. But I don't know that I have a different tip other than what I mentioned in terms of my lesson. But this conversation is really on time. Even just like listening to responses has been really helpful for me, even as a participant in the conversation. But it's bringing up like trust and Nisla mentioned peace and like how do you trust God? How do you trust yourself and build a business accordingly? And I know for me, the thing that is sort of an ongoing conversation in prayer and with my therapist and all of the above is that, I'm just always in a rush to get somewhere, always in a rush to like have the thing built, have the goal met, have the coins in the bank, have like just be done. And for what though? Like I don't know for what reason, like what the pace, who decide, like why I feel like my pace has to be at that speed, but learning to sort of sit down and just like kind of be present and allowed like things to work in divine timing, I think has been definitely a test. And I'm always reminded of, I don't even know what award show this was, but Frankie Beverly, who was like my favorite artist ever, rest his soul. And he said when he was accepting his speech once, like, you know, if you wait on him, he'll show you some things. And that's always stood out to me, because I was like, oh, what an interesting and profound thing to say at an award ceremony, right? But it applies to so many other areas of life, to all areas of life. And so, you know, sort of just taking my foot off the gas, you know, a little bit, and sort of learning how to ease into, settle into what I'm doing and be led into what I'm doing is yeah, what's coming up for me.
Yeah, one of my sisters challenged me. So I did a lot of podcasts this year as we were promoting this book, Brave Women at Work, Lessons in Leadership. I I didn't realize I was doing it, but she said to me, on a couple of these podcasts, you continue to say that, this thing that you're doing now, you're an accidental author or you're an accidental coach. And she was like, I need to challenge you on that. And I'm like, oh, she is so right. I have been using these words, accidental. And of course, I know that there's nothing accidental, but sometimes our mouth precedes our brains in terms of how we talk about our experiences. She was like, everything that has happened in your life has been intentional and ordained. So I'm going to need you to stop saying that it's accidental. And she's absolutely right, because even as we talk about the influence of God and how he leads us, and even when I talk about instinct is tied to spirit, and spirit is God, right? And so none of this, me being an author, me being an executive and leadership transitions coach, me being on this call tonight with this assembly of women, there is nothing accidental about any of it. It all was supposed to happen. And sometimes we don't know until we are miles away from an experience that we're having why we were meant to have that experience. And so what I've decided to do is, and again, I made this decision a while ago, but again, we need to be reminded constantly, because we forget. In our humanity, we think we're in charge. We think we're the ones who's supposed to walk this thing out. We planned it out. We have a 5-year plan. And in year one and day one of month one of year one, we're supposed to do X, Y, and Z. And so what I'm reminded of is that we are supposed to lean into letting the Spirit lead us and guide us. And it does not mean that you cannot have plans and strategies, because he does ask us to make clear our requests. But also we need to leave some room and some flexibility in that for the pivots and the turns and the off ramps that maybe we did not anticipate. And so in the midst of our planning, be willing to listen to where the Spirit leads us and guides us next. And so again, I guess that big tip for me was stop calling things accidental. Know that all of it is intentional and ordained, and that just because you didn't plan it does not mean that God did not have a plan for this. And because what does he tell us? He knows the plans that he has for us. We forget it, but he has never forgotten the plans that he has for us. So even the weirdest of things that occur, like, what is this? Like, I had, for the first time this year, in year 30 of my higher ed career, had somebody below budget in a major way. And then a series of circumstances unfolded where somebody actually attacked my character with recordings and website launches and Instagram accounts. And there was a season in my life where reputationally, I would have been destroyed, and I would have been out there trying to fight the big fight of putting it all in place. And when my institution asked me, like, how do you want to handle this? I said, they were like, should we do a press release? I was like, absolutely not, because that is distraction. There are things that I'm supposed to be doing in this season, really important milestones that I need to hit in this season, that if I get distracted by this, will never get done. So you may give the board talking points, but I refuse to center myself in a narrative that is not mine. My reputation is not tied to what some random person says about me. My reputation is tied to the work that I'm doing and how I walk that out. And so it has all turned out beautifully, but I will tell you, put me, look, knees down, head down, hands up, right? Which is the posture that we should always be in anyway, and heart open to what God wanted to say to me. And when I tell you the guidance that came to me and the way that it came to me was just so beautiful. It came in conversations with people. It came in, I couldn't even get to church, but the video messages that came from my pastor, he can work this out. He can work this in. God can use this too. And I'm like, oh my God, like every one of these messages are taking us in a direction. And so I don't think anything that happens is accidental. And the next time I use those words, I will personally slap my own hand and ask myself to refocus on what's really happening, because it removes the credit that should be going to our higher power. It removes the acknowledgement that should be going to the spirit that guides all the things that we do, even when we don't see the great orchestration that's happening in the background. So I am truly appreciating this conversation because, again, I don't think any of it is accidental.
I love that, and
Okay.
I'm a user of the word accidental. Well, I'm a former user of the word accidental, so I'm gonna receive that tip because you're absolutely right, and it kind of brings me to another question. And this is just off my dome. This is not planned, but I kind of want to talk about trusting our gut because that came up in a few responses. And I'm phrasing it that way because I know that, the majority of us are like, faith believers and all of that. But I know I got people in the audience that they heard God and they went left. That's fine. We don't all have to believe, we don't all have to believe the same thing. I respect everybody's right to in that regard. But, you know, the sentiment still exists. The sentiment of, we have our gut, we have our instinct, and speaking to restoring that. So are there ways that you can think of in your life that you reconnected to that gut instinct, or are there struggles that you're having regarding trusting, in the same way that we have to learn to trust God, we have to learn to trust ourselves as well, and get back to that energy of trusting that we are, good enough, smart enough, or making the right decision. So I'm gonna just open the floor. Anybody has anything they want to say in that regard?
So I'll start with one example. So this was probably, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. My oldest was 9. And this is, so do you remember when Obama talked about if he had sons, they wouldn't play in the NFL, they wouldn't play football?
Mm-hmm.
And I shared that I agreed with that. My oldest at the time was distraught. And he was just like, Mom, how can you say that I couldn't do this? And I was so I explained to him all the reasons why. And my husband was like, you really didn't have to say that. He was like, a lot of little boys have these dreams and they figure out for themselves that like it's not going to happen. At this point, like he had never played more than flag football. Okay. He was like the first time he got tackled, he would have realized it. And so like from that point on, I just remember specifically, with my kids and like having that pregnant pause,
Mm-hmm.
right? And letting some time pass before I immediately responded. Like with the same kid a few years later, he comes to me, he was 11. He's like, Mom, when can I get a cell phone? And I'm sitting here thinking about it and, having this whole conversation in my head. And he says, How about when I have a car? I was like, yes, because that makes sense. When you have a car, you need a cell phone. And he was like, okay, he left happy. I was happy. Now, and so I've seen that play out time and time again, definitely with my kids and one like having this pause so that I'm not reacting immediately to something and allowing some space for wisdom to come in and be like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like this is what you need to say, or in this moment, you don't need to say anything, and they will figure it out for themselves and then come back to you. So I think that that's definitely helped to foster really healthy relationships with my kids, which is something that I am very focused on doing, right? Um, so just trusting my gut when it comes to parenting and knowing when it's, again, we all know that you're supposed to pick your battles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So when is this something that it's worth saying, oh no, we have to do this and this is why, or letting it go and just saying, it'll be okay. Or I'll be there to help you when get up from that stumble from the
Right,
choice that you
right,
made.
right. Yeah, I think it's hard with with parenting of like, that dance of what mistakes do I allow to happen versus where do I have to kind of intervene?
I say for me, I had to this year, like I said before, I was taking a lot more time on my health. And so, similarly, in slowing down for me was going back to practices that or helped for me to slow the brain down to, didn't realize how much I needed to re-regulate the nervous system, around. And so, with this past year in this not quite comfortable inflation we were going in, a lot of services aren't being used. And
Yeah.
so, especially with us, like everything kind of slowed down. And so, in the midst of being panicky about business slowing down, I just wound up using the opportunity. It was just like, okay, well, let me go and fix things that aren't okay. Let me go and just take a breath. And in that, realize some things that needed to be worked on and get back to listening to um my intuition, which I kind of had lost for I won't say I lost it, but kind of went quiet for um some time, having dealt with my own personal struggles. And then
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd say for last year, I learned about or had met a couple of people who studied or were interested in human design. It was a field that I'm not, I wasn't that familiar with. But one of them said something about intuition that I felt was really tangible. She described it as, she was trying to give me this visualization. She was like, if you have almost like a stream of consciousness, like a literal river, you've got logs floating down that river or objects floating down that river. The ones that are drawn to you, that come your way, and you just like leap up and down in your spirit, like, yes, 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 go with that. Like, go with that sort of that. I don't want to necessarily say it has to be a yes, but whatever the big definitive knowing is around that
Mm-hmm.
thing, go with that. If there's something that comes along your way and you are either neutral or like, like, then don't go that way. And so, sort of just even that I understand intuition sometimes doesn't come as like a boulder. That way, a lot of times it's whispers, it's feathers, and you kind of have to, get quiet and still enough to be able to perceive those. But for those who are listening that might just need a different way to sort of conceptualize it, like maybe listen, what are the things that are standing out to you, glaring at you as you're going through like decisions you have to make, life choices and opportunities in front of you could be a one way to think about it.
and I just want to say real quickly that I looked into human design this year as well, and that was also part of some things that I had looked to get a little bit more understanding of myself. I'm like, okay, well, I don't have to do what society is telling me to do. Because what society is telling me to do is actually going against everything in my spirit. I feel very, like I think I give you one thing that was really eye-opening was how a lot of times we talk about, especially in like coaching spaces, about finding your niche, right? There's a lot of people that aren't supposed to be doing that. And that's actually like really, really bad. And that's one thing that for me, I was like, I've always felt very much against that because I was just like, but I want to do everything. Like I like everything. I can't find a niche. I don't want that. And apparently for me, that is something I can't do. Don't find a niche. Don't, it's okay. And so finding that like confirmation there was just like, oh, great. So it's like I can do whatever I want. Okay, great.
I love that, like, because I feel like we all feel like there's a way, and I know we talked about that in the beginning, like that there's this way, and then if it's not this way, then it's wrong, and it's never that black and white because there's a way that works for you. Like, there's a lot of weird stuff that I know about myself that works. It sounds insane. Like I was explaining something to somebody one day and I'm like, so I like to have routine and flexibility. I can be on routine for 2.5 to 3 days max, and then I will disregard everything that is being forced upon me, even if it's being forced upon me by myself. I cannot meal prep. Like people do meal prep, don't work for me. Never gonna
Can
work for me.
you repeat that because I don't think the people in the back heard you because that's really profound.
What about the meal prep thing? I can't do it.
Meal prep, I'm talking about
Oh,
your
about it not being like there's no right way. There really is no right way. There's the right way that works for you.
that's
Like
awesome.
I've met myself before. So I'm gonna be routine for like 3 days and then I'm going to freestyle for like 2 days and then I will get tired of freestyling and then all of a sudden I need routine again. That's how I operate. And once I started leaning into it as opposed to fighting it, then that's when things started to come together. And so I call them cheat codes. You got to figure out what your cheat codes are, what works for you. And it might be a little piece of what this person said, and it might be a little piece of what somebody else said, but ultimately, it's got to make sense for you. And like you say, like it may be like 1,000 people saying it's this way. But if you have like such a strong visceral reaction to it, it's like, huh, it's one or two things happening. Either it's a place where you need to like grow and you just don't wanna, or it just ain't a fit. And that's when, it's so important that we get back to connecting with our instincts because as you grow and heal, you start to tell a difference. Like it's like, no, no, this not me. This is, this just does not fit. It's not a fit. It doesn't make sense. I'm gonna do it my way. Um, we started when we before we started recording, we are talking about, Capricorn energy. I am a Capricorn. Goats are stubborn. I'm gonna do it my way in the end anyway, but you really have to know what is the fit, what is, and be able to stand in that because one of the things that I think I dislike about society, current society, is this like there is, one way and then anything else is wrong. And even when they're two opposing points, the people on each side want the other side to yield to them. Like they want them to bow down to them and say that they are the victor. And it's like, why can't you do what you want to do? And I do what I want to do. And we just live, happy coexistence of, you like, Pepsi and I like Coke. I mean, it's like that, it's going to be okay.
Mhm. So I know one of the other things that I do is homeschool. And when I first started, I was looking for, again, the way, right? Like what's the way? But what was freeing for me was reading this book and looking at 20 different schedules and 20 different lifestyles, and they were all different. And that gave me the grace that I needed to realize that I could make this look like how I needed it to look. And for that particular.
Uh-oh.
She was on a roll too.
I know, I know, I know. I'm like, I was all in. But she gonna be back. She gonna be back and we'll catch the end of that. But I mean, I see where she was going, and yeah, there's so many different ways of like success. There's the episode that comes out after this one, we were having a discussion on this topic and talking about the particular discussion was like, for me, like embracing the fact that I'm not salesy. That's not who I am.
Yeah.
There's some people that are, and there's nothing wrong with that. But I always feel like when I'm in the company of people that are salesy, it's like, well, you have to. I don't know. I do not. I do not. I absolutely do not. Or I'm an introvert. I mean, I know it don't seem like it, but I actually am. And it's frustrating when people act like there's something wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with it. It's just a different way of being. And I mean, I don't know if y'all read like Good to Great. Most of the people that went from good to great, the leaders were introverts. Like every like thing has a positive and a negative to it. Like every, just like, words with, connotations and denotation, like there's a positive and a negative to anything. It but we always want to paint whatever we're not as the negative, or whatever we say is mainstream. I think it's so funny, like, especially with introvert and extrovert, like everybody acts like extrovert is the way that you should be. I probably meet 10 introverts for every one extrovert that I meet. Like, I'm like, who is doing the calculations on this? Because, like, whenever I talk to somebody, I'm like, well, yeah, of course they're an extrovert because they're like, that's how they're presenting. And they're like, no, no, I'm an introvert. And I'm like, okay, so who are the extroverts? Because they're not as many of them as it's always put out there, like it's like five introverts in the world and like everyone else is just extroverted, and it's like that's not the case. Like
I think
people have different traits.
I agree, and what you're saying, like two opposing ideas can coexist. I think where Ty was going, or at least where I felt like my spirit was with her on, is like giving yourself permission to
Yes.
go against the grain. Like Catherine was saying, like just because everybody else has a niche, I don't have to, right? And so that goes into the self-trust that we've been talking about. Like if you have to, if you're following your intuition is saying do this thing, and maybe mainstream or everybody else or even your coach or whomever is telling you to do this other thing, is like, what are you going to trust? And then are you also going to give yourself permission to be different than the thing that everyone else is like nudging you to do? So how do you stand in, who you are, what you came to accomplish, even if, the folks around you don't understand? And I know that could be tricky because, we are human beings. We are made to connect and be in relation with other people. I don't know if y'all read that book, The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks, and it's talking about your upper limiting beliefs. And like one of those core ones that I deeply identify with is belonging. Like you sort of limit yourself so that you can stay a part of the pack, but that will keep us stuck, 100% of the time. So like, how do you give yourself permission to, you know, um, go beyond those things or go against the grain so that you can, do what you came here to do, as we've been saying.
Yeah, in February of last year, I was at this women's retreat, and my presentation was, you don't need permission, walk into your greatness now. And there was another person who did a presentation, similar kind of topic. And mine was much more motivational, sort of work it out, figure it out. You have the capacity to do what you need to do, and you have everything you need in your toolbox already. Hers was more, okay, we're going to sit down and we're going to cultivate these plans and strategies, or, what's your word for the year, or what do you want to do for the next 3 months or the next 6 months? And so she was like, oh, I know Shigs has, her plans. Why don't you share your plans with the group? I was like, yeah, no, I didn't do a word of the year. I didn't vision board this past January. I threw the whole playbook away last year and decided that I would just kind of go with the flow. It was very much out of character for me. It was so shocking for her that she must have stared at me for the rest of the retreat like, who are you? What is happening right now? I'm so confused. This is so out of character for you. I said, except I don't don't know that it is out of character. I think this is just another dimension of me, and this is something that I want to explore this year. I don't have a problem with vision boards or words of the year or any of that, and those things have served me well. Now, as I look back on the year that I had, here's what I know about myself. If I had sat down and put together this really intensive plan or, really leaned into this one word, I would have pushed myself to the point of breakdown to try to do the thing that I had put to paper because that is how I'm built. But what I needed to be last year was in a particular flow because there were things that were happening within both my 9 to 5 and, my passion work that were just not, they were not predictable. These were things that would not have allowed me to walk out some robust plan that I put in place. But because of who I am, I would have given up valuable sleep and time that I needed for rest and rejuvenation to try to get this thing done because it's just how I'm built. So it was not easy for me to lean into this flow state. And yet, instinctively, I knew in February that was the state I needed to be in. And thank God that I listened to that because the rest of the year, because I remained in this state of, I'm going to take each day as it comes, I'm going to remain in this state of flow. I'm still going to, there will be plans within that flow, but the plan itself won't be the driver of everything that I do. It made a world of difference. And honestly, I think is the reason why I survived and maybe even had some moments of thriving in the midst of what I would call just a super chaotic, unpredictable year that continued to throw punches, throw hands. Like 2024 was not playing nice in the sandbox, at least not in terms of how my life unfolded. And so again, for me, that was, back to this question of instinct. That for me was an instinctual thing because it was so completely out of character for what I would normally do. And it played out exactly the way it needed to.
Wow. Yes, I'll go. I think for this year, for me, I've learned to be guided by the Holy Spirit. And one thing God spoke to me was, He was like, "You hear from me, Shadana." Because sometimes I'm in my head, like, is it me? Is it God? Is it the enemy? Like, who's guiding these thoughts? So I learned to like start living a lifestyle of prayer and fasting. So I fast at least 3 times out of the month, and it really helps me hear from the Holy Spirit. So I would say most of my thoughts and stuff are guided by the Holy Spirit. And like, I think it's Shate talked about like, like trusting your instincts, which is really like the Holy Spirit leading you to do this or not go here or not go there.
I mean, I agree with you in reference to being led by the Spirit. In reference to 2024 was a trying year because I had always worked in my business, but then I was actually like full time in it. And then just to be led in God and say, where should I be? And even I look back at the things that God allowed me to be a part, there was always a lesson. I always look at things, other people might think it is a failure, but there's a lesson, a growing. How sometimes he'll take some things out of us that we like, oh, I've been delivered. That's not part of me no more. But he's still taking those stuff out, like rebirthing. So I just felt in my spirit, like, 2025 is like a rebirthing, that us leaning more on him, really trusting him. And what has helped me so far, in a different perspective, that he gave us this business. He gave us this. He is allowing us to be stewards of it. And what always helps me is this is my race, my path, and is at my pace. And I'm where I need to be right now. And I need to allow to be present and enjoy it. And that has helped me. And then anytime where I feel like, oh, I didn't get to sail, I didn't do that, I always go back to there's 8 billion people on the planet. I still got more to go. It's 8 billion people on the planet. And he created us all different. And so it's not in competition. We all might have the same clients or not, but we have something that no one has, is what God puts in us. And so I always have to be reminded what's for me is for me. And that's what I have learned, and just to leave it be still and don't look and see what other people are doing and just realize I'm right here where I need to be. This is my path.
I love that. I love that. I think the biggest thing that's like this whole conversation that's sticking out to me is reaching that point where you can stand 10 toes down in it. And um I know you mentioned belonging, and that is the challenge. That is always the challenge. I've kind of been, I never mind being on my own. I don't mind being the odd man out, like, so to speak. But I do often feel like there's that pressure to, like everybody's like, oh, this is great. And I'm like, eh. And you feel like, you don't want to be like Debbie Downer, but it's like I don't see it the same way that you seeing this or whatever. And I guess just kind of pulling everybody's like thoughts together. I love what Ty said about the pregnant pause. And I have definitely been leaning on that a lot in the sense that um I feel like tend to see things ahead of a lot of other people. So like the same piece of information is thrown out there and I'm like, so why y'all celebrating? Ain't nobody thinking about X, Y. Like I'm like, nobody, none of these. All right, okay, cool. And so I've learned to, because sometimes people are not ready to receive it. And I've learned to be more discerning about, I'm not going to change my view because that's what the masses believe, if that's not what I really believe. But if, but I learned to like have that pregnant pause and like, wait till the wheels start turning, the dust starts settling, and people start saying, oh, well, what about, and I'm like, yeah, yeah. I got a whole list. You want to listen to it? I've been thinking about this for like 3 months. I'm glad that y'all have joined me here. Um, so like learning that a lot of times I know that I'm not the trend girl. I'm not the, just like,
Mhm.
I know that about myself, and like, just at this stage in life, embracing that instead of like feeling back to the whole idea of feeling like different, or feeling like these things are weird or whatever. No, that's
Mhm.
just who I am, and somebody got to see what's coming. Like somebody has to, they have forecasters for a reason,
Right.
like that. So that's who I am, and looking at that as a strength and not a weakness, but also
Mhm.
just when I feel it, believe it.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to share, and I've heard this, like your calling isn't comfortable. So if you are comfortable, you are not walking in your calling,
Mm.
right? And then also you talked about like standing 10 toes down, like just because the world is going one way and then you have other beliefs, but also being okay with that, like trusting your instincts. And what I think is important is that we respect each other's beliefs about something, right?
Yes.
I don't want to get too much into politics, but side and then we seen the other side. And if you wasn't yielding to this one side, then people didn't like you, or you wasn't for the cause, or you wasn't for this. But it's like, what happened to being free thinkers, right? If I want to be a Republican, then I can be a Republican. And if I want to be a Democrat, then I should be a respectable Democrat. You know what I mean? But it was just so divisive and we weren't respectable of others' opinions. And so I think that's important.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not gonna get deep into politics either.
Yeah.
I'm gonna leave that where it is. But just from that standpoint, I think it goes back to that whole idea of we've lost the ability to have discourse a long time ago. And again, it's and so I feel like people have been like one-sided for a very long time, to where it has gotten to the point where I think there's a lot of repair that would need to happen for people to have a discourse about certain things. But like I'm gonna pull it back from politics. It could just come down to something just as simple as food. You know, I mean, like you can go on social media right now and people are just arguing to the death about the most inane things and like really, really serious about it. And it's like, I don't understand why you care what that other person eats. Like it, they're not making you eat it. They can like whatever they want. Um, so I think that that's what makes it hard for us to trust our instincts is that we live in a world where if you stand out in any sort of way, people want to stamp it out. Like, why are you allowed to go against the grain? And instead of celebrating that and using that as a way of giving themselves permission to be themselves fully, people are like, no, 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 that's too complicated. We all gonna like this. We all gonna do this. We all gonna say, this. And then we all just become boring. Like, like we just all, um, like if I go on social media, I feel like one day I was scrolling and I was just like, all of these things look the same. Like, they're different companies, different people selling different things, but I'm like, if I see one more, curated bookshelf and this particular car and somebody walking holding this particular handbag, I'm like, y'all can't all like the exact same things. You know what I'm saying? Like, even if we went into one singular store, let's say it only sells one brand in that store, we are all going to gravitate to something different because of our own personal preferences or likes. Like you are not going to tell me that like the majority of people all like a one thing. Like we've just been taught to assimilate till it's gotten to this point of we fear being authentic.
Yeah, because that's about status. You know what I mean? Like, so when you are a part of the pack, when you have what the other person has, when you're able to keep up with the Joneses, then that becomes, something that is not calling or purpose or, you know, something a deeper meaning. That's status. And a lot of people, um, yeah, that's important to a lot of people. That's why we want to make a certain amount. That's why we want to wear certain types of clothes. That's why we want to date a certain kind of person, right? It's all about, you know, status.
But what does it feel like? I know what it looks like. You know what I'm saying? But what does it feel like? Like that's my like at this point I'm much more concerned about what my life feels like. It doesn't matter to me what it looks like to anybody else because you could do all of those things and then not be happy.
No
I
peace.
think, oh, sorry. I think that's a lesson that we just kind of eventually learn, right? It's like that part of getting older, like we talk about like our 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 parents or grandparents are at that age of 0, given. And so it's like we just kind of gradually get to that space. And it's like I wish like well, I shouldn't say I wish about it, but like if that wasn't such a big thing when I was younger, what are the things I like probably would have learned ahead of time or could have done? Not to say it in the sense of like a regret moment, but to think about like the pressure that's off um the feeling like we have to do things on a timeline. We have to do things now. Or we can just flow with what's happening in our lives right now. We can just flow with what we want to do. Because what we want to do now may not be what we want to do tomorrow. And it's okay. So
I like that. I want to pick up on that because I had a good conversation with a girlfriend about that, about the last part that you said about what we want may change. And that's okay. Like I've seen people like, committed to like they gonna die on that hill. And I'm like, you stopped caring about that like 10 years ago. Like it's okay. Like you can pivot, you can change. And again, it don't matter what it look like to anybody else. And also, like, I think for me, like having gone in some different directions, I think sometimes we feel like we're starting over, but you still got all of the like the knowledge and the wisdom that you gained over that time. Like, so it's not like you just, starting from scratch. You just connecting to something that makes more sense. So I guess in that vein, what are some of the pivots that you made that really changed your life, that you had to be, because it takes some bravery to make those pivots, but what are some of those pivots?
Well, I am muted, so I'll go ahead and provide some feedback. The fact that I have a business, that I do motivational speaking, that I do coaching, that I'm a two-time best-selling author, these things are not part of my plans. These are not things that I intended to do. Because we were taught that stability is the way. You want a job that pays the bills and gives you some health benefits and all that's great, but somewhere along the way, and I talked with our students about this at convocation one year. I said, we all have this definition of success that our typically our parents or whomever that major influence in our life is that they gave to us. And what I encourage them to do is keep the pieces that resonate for you, but then redefine success for yourself. So for me, success is, yes, I want to have money in the bank. I care about my health, so I would like some health benefits, but it also includes adventure and joy and experiences and words that I did not hear my parents necessarily tossing around. And this is not me being critical of them. The success that they talked about was a level of success that they didn't have when they were growing up. And so they redefined it for themselves. And then because they gave me a different kind of foundation, I was able to redefine that for myself. And now I'm in a situation where we define that we've given our daughter the runway to define that for herself. I mean, she's a dance and theater major, and the people around me are like, "What's she gonna do with that? How's she gonna make money from that?" I was like, "Doesn't matter." Because we have set her on a path that she will work that thing out, and she has 1,000 different directions she can go in. I'm much more concerned about her being happy and joyful and doing something where she feels like it brings her joy and it feeds her passion. And I know that it does, because the way she hones in and she focuses on this it is brilliant to behold. So she has a level of freedom that I didn't have, and her definition of success will look very different. Am I concerned that she'll be able to take care of herself? Nope, because guess what I know for sure? When you pursue the thing that was buried in you to do, and you plant yourself in a place and allow those seeds to blossom, the success is the inevitable outcome of that. And success in terms of how she defines it, not in terms of how I would have defined it or how my parents would define it, but how she defines it. That for me is the true definition of being free. And so that's what I want for her. And I love this book that I read a long time ago about raising free people. I'm like, yes, this is what it means to raise a free person. And I won't tell you that it was easy for me to get here, because, like I said, sis used to have a plan for everything. But the moment I released myself from having to control all the details of what success looks like for her, it gave her the opportunity to do this thing the way she wants to do it. And it is a beautiful thing to watch how she's blossoming within that. And really, I think everybody deserves that. Every human deserves that. But because we are reading from somebody else's playbook or singing from somebody else's songbook, then we get lost in the sauce and we don't know who we are, and we lose our way.
Listen, that's a whole word. I had to jump in immediately. A couple of things. So my first career, this is actually what I was going to share. So it's interesting that you mentioned that about your daughter. My first career, I was a professional dancer choreographer. So I'm happy to talk to her about what that means and what it looks like and what some options are. But all the pivots that I've had professionally are just that, what you were talking about, Danielle, like just changing your mind at some point. I built this career, 12 plus years that I adored. Got a master's in dance, did tons of theater choreography, like travel, did all the things that I love to do. And then one day it just didn't fit for my life anymore. I had outgrown it. I evolved past it. And then I transitioned into this career of in workforce development. So, leading career programs teams for, adult professionals who are transitioning their career in some type of way. And my last role at the top of 2024 in that space, I was a VP of a programs team. And I took that job. It was a pivot in a way, but I took the job. This is kind of going back to intuition and things. I took the role saying, okay, it's a yes, but it wasn't a hell yes. It was kind of like I could do it. This sounds interesting. When really I was wanting to, wishing I could go back on my own and work independently, build my own thing, but I was too scared to do that. And so I take this role, and it was not a great work environment. It was toxic. And so less than a year in, I was faced with this sort of opportunity to either stick it out because I gave my word, or pivot, make a different choice for my own mental health, and also to do what I was supposed to do to begin with, which is go back out on my own. And so I ended up pivoting. And I guess what I like to say when I talk about all the transitions I've had in life is that, sometimes people say like, oh, you seem so fearless, you're so courageous, you just go after what you want. I will say, yes, it is. There's something within me that it is scarier for me to stay stuck than it is for me to face the new thing. So, sure, that's great. And also, it would not be responsible of me if I didn't say that every pivot also comes with this sort of messy middle on the back end of it. So, this place where you're not quite who you used to be, but you're not quite who you are becoming yet. And you got to like wait that part out. And it's really uncomfortable. And so, that's why a lot of people just stay where they are. But I would say, pivots are very powerful. And also, there's a dot, dot, dot in that too.
I love that you spoke to the messy, because I don't think we talk about the messy enough. And you said about, like, people saying, telling you that you're fearless. And I'm just thinking about, from my own perspective, like having received that feedback. And I'm like, so you don't hear what's going on inside of here. Um, because I hate when people say, like, use that term fearless, it's not real. Like, fear is an actual emotion, it's an actual part of like who we are. And sometimes we have to just push past it. But there's no, like, I'm still waiting to meet the person that is like fearless. Like, maybe like little bitty kids before they ever fell before, like, because they don't know no better. But outside of that, there is that fear. It's there.
We
Those are
just
there are moments where you sitting there and you like, Lord, you should. When you was, they got a lot of people named Danielle. You sure it was this one that you was talking to? Because I'm not sure that that's the one you was talking to. But you are sure. Okay, okay. Well, let me figure this out, because obviously you are clear and I'm not. There is that moment. There's that fear. There's that, trying to get your way out of it. I don't know if y'all experienced that. Like, I've talked to a lot of people that have, and I know I have, where God told you something and then you tried to hide from it for a long time, and then it keep coming back around. No matter how many times you try to run and hide, and then he keep, and you like, so we here again, Lord. I mean, I thought we had changed. We was okay. We back. Okay, cool. It's gonna keep chasing you until you embrace it. But there is that messy, and you gotta get comfortable, so to speak, in the messy. You got to understand that that's kind of what goes with it. You're not going to know all of the answers. Even if the Lord made you in a way that makes you want to know all the answers. That's like a funny joke that he has or something. I don't know. But you, I'm like, so you made me like this, but then you want to keep me in the dark. Okay, cool. We gonna work that out. It's gonna be great. But there's that messy. And that's not gonna show up on social media. That's not going to show up in anybody's bio or their story. I mean, maybe in their book, but not in the abbreviated version of their story. And if any of y'all want to speak to that or the original question, but just because I want the listeners to understand, like that messy that you feeling, that's a part of it. It's not because you're going in the wrong direction. it's That's a part of it, and we all experience it. And it's another reason why community is important, because we can have conversations like this and be like, girl, you went through that too. Oh, okay, all right, then I feel better. But so I just want to throw that out there as well as another point of conversation of that messy.
When I think of messy, um, I think it's a time to like be grounded, because I remember travel so much, being part of the military, had like so many jobs, and y'all probably could all attest this. You be at the job, you get excited, you learn new things, and you're like, what's next? And then there's this wall. And then you're like, but I want to go. And they're like, no, 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 right now. And then you feel like, wait a second, you are hindering my growth. I want to know more, because that's how I'm wired. And I believe as entrepreneurs and small business owners, you just want more, and you want to learn, you want to grow. And then when you get to that that you say, okay, my time is up, Lord. You say, okay, and then in your spirit it's coming. And then what are you doing in there? So you're waiting and you're waiting. And I can literally attest that I was at a job, and I was, in my mind, I thought I was going to be there just for a year. Because I was just like, I was like, okay, I really don't want to take this, but I'm gonna keep the peace, because my husband said, we need to bring in another income, because we was transition, kids, school, and all this. And I was like, okay. I stayed a year, and I was like, okay, what's my purpose, Lord? What am I gonna do here? And I said, okay, well, and I was more than qualified for the job. They gave me the job. It's through the grace of God. Didn't even have to do an interview for it. I got the job. And so I got the job, and so I'm doing it, and then I'm like, showing love, and pouring out to the unliked person, and just started praying, just doing like so many great things besides what I was doing. I was like, okay, this is cool. But then I got to a point where I was like, what next, Lord? Where are you taking? And I just felt like, and then I started seeing the animosity, the bickering, the toxicity, and it was just like bad. And I was just like, okay, I want to keep my witness. I want to keep it. And then I didn't want to, like, and I'll come home, and my husband like, oh, don't leave that mess at the door. And I was like, okay, God, I know I don't want to like mess up this my witness. I want to be true. I want to be that light. And even in that, I had to be still. And I was just like, I gotta leave. When are you going to leave? And so 1 year went, 2 years went, 3 years went. I was like, okay, God, what's going on? And so I'm trying to do everything possible, looking for other jobs. He wouldn't. And it wasn't until we had this big blowout at work, and I had to make a decision. Like, am I going to like trust him? And it was like the building of the faith, building my faith up, like, because I said I wanted to leave, but how did that look like? What was the plan? I was all about plans and I'm going to do this, and, I'm going to have this, I'm going to get another job, and I'll do my business, and I'll do this. But what happens if you walk out and you don't have a plan? What do you do? Do you really trust God in that? And so I'll never forget, I went to my supervisor and I said, I'm going to be leaving at the end of the month. And she's like, "Oh, you're leaving at the end of the month? Oh, okay." No, I said I won't be here. That I said yes, I won't be here. The end. I said my last day will be the end of the month. And so she's like, "Are you leaving? You going somewhere?" I said, "Yeah, I'm resigning." She was like, "What? You resigning? What are you gonna do?" They were like, they couldn't believe it that I was leaving. And I even with that, that was like a walk of faith. But people like, "Oh, you were so brave, you just left." And you had a guaranteed government job and all that stuff. But just the walking out on faith, and it was messy. There was times like, am I doing this the right way? Did I hear God? I mean, is this something that, but I knew that he wanted more. I wanted more. And I knew that there was something bigger than me. And for me to get to that point where I just had to like really trust. And what was said earlier is like, I didn't feel comfortable being in the mess anymore. I didn't want to stay there. I was miserable. I saw people doing other stuff, and then I was just like, what makes them different than me? And then I realized it's my mindset. Once I changed my mindset to know that I'm capable, I'm created to do more, and that I have the ability, even if I didn't, even if I fail, I know that God was going to lead me. I was going to have that grace. And then what was so awesome that, me and my husband were on one accord with it. And that was the amazing thing. But it was hard. It was challenging. I was like, ugh. There was days where I'm going to leave. And I kept saying, I'm leaving. I knew, and I even put it on the calendar one year. This is my last day. And then I looked and I was like, heck, I'm still here. And then I did another year. This is my last day because I just believe I was leaving and I was preparing. And I was preparing, and I didn't know when I was leaving, and I didn't know how it was going to happen. I thought I was going to get another job, and I was going to leave. I didn't know that I was going to resign and actually be on my own.
Been there. Been there and done that. I ain't gonna say how many years I stayed over that one though. Um, too many. Too many. But I think
Yeah.
for me, this most recent pivot has been the most challenging because when I left from my job, I kind of had a similar experience. I was interviewing. I had went on all these different interviews like for another job, and I'm like on third interviews and stuff like that, and not getting these jobs. And I'm like, man, like but that wasn't where God wanted me to go. And I was talking to business coach. I was initially workflow was supposed to have a whole different scope to it. It was like business consulting or whatever. And I had an appointment with the business coach to talk about workflow back then. And the night before the call, I got a download from God and he said, "No, you need to take this balloon business to where it needs to go. And then we gonna circle back." And so I left from the job and went immediately into like the business was booming. Like it was already growing, but I went like um I left the job on a Tuesday. I was setting up stuff for the Pelicans in the playoffs on a Wednesday. So it was like that month of March was insane. No, April. It was April. That month of April was like insane, like nonstop, like from when I quit the job. Okay, so now fast forward to now that I'm trying to kind of put the balloon business on autopilot and focusing on the coaching. It didn't go like that. And I'm like, so Lord, you had told me that I was trying to listen and I was being obedient. And before it went like this. And so now you want to do something different. Now we remixing it. And I spent like the better part of like the beginning of this year because last year end of the year he pulled back a lot of my balloon business and I was like, what we do, this my light bill money, what we doing, Lord, like what we doing? And so I was like, okay, all right, I get it. I have to let go of one thing to kind of focus on the other. I'm not giving this the time that I need to give it, right? So I pull back, and in my mind, I felt like it had to be one or the other, right? So I pulled completely back from the balloon business. Like, I'm still doing orders, but I'm just like pulled completely back. And it's not going how I wanted it to go. And I'm like, frustrated in that. And I actually went, the other Sheila, she was on a couple of seasons ago. She had a retreat this year, and I went to her retreat. And the first speaker that got up there, she started asking questions, and she asked me a question. And I was like, that moment that somebody says something that is both profound, but also you feel like dumb in the moment, like why you didn't think about that yourself. And she said, well, you still need to make your light bill money. So, figure that out while you're doing the other thing. And I'm like, yeah, like that's a thing. That's the thing. And so, it helped me to like just shift and refocus, and it changed like kind of how the rest of the year went. But it's that messy. It's that messy. Sometimes we feel stuck, sometimes we feel confused. It's not, it doesn't go as cute as it looks on the outside, but we don't get to see other people's inside. So we don't know that other people are having the same or similar experiences, or that back to the whole two things can be true. You can be an expert at what you do, you can be great at what you do, you can be, that can be your calling and where God wants you to be, and you could also struggle with getting there. So any thoughts on that? I'm gonna ask one more question before we wrap up. So my last question, and this is you may not even have answer to it, but because we talk a lot about, work-life balance and everything, what are the ways that you avoid burnout?
I think for me, I've just been learning to have boundaries. I used to be a worker bee, like I can work 12 hours a day. But of course, I said earlier, I was passionate about what I do. So now, because I work for myself, I don't start my work day till 9 a.m. And at 5 p.m., I cut it off. And then I don't work on weekends. Every now and then I'll work one weekend out the month if I have to. But other than that, it's just about having boundaries. And I used to work. Now I play as well, like having a social life, bike riding, just it's the little things, going for a walk in the park. So just making sure that I prioritize my mental health is very important. So been that's how I've been managing that.
I love it. And boundaries are so so important.
Mhm. And also one more thing, using the do not disturb action on your phone. Like at a certain
Ooh,
time, put
yes.
on do not disturb because people will constantly text you and call you. And then that's constantly alerts coming to your phone, messing with your brain, distracting you from what you want to do. So yeah, use the do not disturb button.
And sometimes I use it during the daytime too.
Oh
Like,
yeah, for
even during
sure.
working hours, like if I'm working on something and I really need to focus,
Yeah.
I will just turn it on, do not disturb. Or just sometimes, I don't know, I don't know if it's my anxiety or what, but sometimes just even if I don't look at the phone, something about the little ding just be
The
like,
little ding,
like I'm
yeah.
like, oh, stop dinging.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not afraid to turn that. Like, even if I just say, oh, for the next hour, turn it on to just block out the world.
Hmm. Yeah.
I agree. I also have been doing that. I do from 9 to 6, because I allow myself to have lunch. So I even schedule it because sometimes you feel like, oh, I'm so deep into this, I could do this. And then what I do is I reward myself at the end of the month. I go on a spa day and
Mm.
I treat that to myself. So I look forward towards that. And then one other tip that I do is I do a pause break. I set an alarm on my phone at a certain time, and I just stop and just to be thankful and just have a space just to just to be present and just to pause. And so that's one of the things I have done, and it has worked. But then like you said, life is trying to trickle in there. But I'm gonna start doing that. Do not disturb. I just put my stuff on silent, and then I'd be like, did anybody call? But I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna definitely do that.
Yeah, I usually flip it over. So if I do it, I flip the phone over because if I have it up, then you see the things come through. And this is just for like the audience because I know people resist whenever I say do not, put the phone on do not disturb. You can favorite the people that need to get in touch with you. So if you got kids, if you got, spouse or whatever like that, put them on favorite. They still can come through if they need you. But, you like, because people get like really weird about it. And I'm like, man, look, like sometimes, and that's, I guess, probably the introvert in me. Sometimes I'm like, I don't want to talk to nobody. Like, and I just want to be in quiet space. And we have to embrace that, even if it's not something that you do all the time. But we talked about intuition and, God and all of this, and the answers come in stillness. And a lot of times that's why when we, look for answers, when we pray for things, a lot of times the reason why we not hearing these because we don't sit still long enough to be able to hear it and process it. We just keep going and we miss it. So don't be afraid to be in silence.
That's good. I'll echo the what's already been said. Boundaries for sure. So working set hours, scheduling my lunch break. I definitely do now. I take the end of the year always a couple of weeks, but now a coach was saying to me last year, like, why not also schedule time quarterly, like maybe a long weekend each quarter? And it made a lot of sense to me because I look forward to those last 2 weeks of the year to get like all my creative inspiration. As a creative, I want to read more books and watch documentaries and all these things. But I'm like, oh, it would be nice to like be filling my creative tank throughout the year. So this year I'm trying two new things, and that's to have a couple of long weekends, like one per quarter. The other thing I'm trying, and I don't know why, to your point about something seeming so simple that you didn't think of, I don't know why I didn't think before this year to maybe run my own personal career like I led teams. So we always when I was leading teams, we every quarter had, you know, this retreat where we had a retrospective. We took a look at the data, we planned our goals, we, celebrated what we've done. So really like baked into our processes this time to like reflect and just take a pause break, as we've been saying. And I'm going to do that for the first time this year, even though I'm a team of one and just some like part-time help. So I've put it on my calendar to look at data, look at goals, to just sit and reflect what went well, what didn't, right before my long weekend. So I'm looking forward to seeing how I might feel, I guess, energetically later in the year with those in.
I really I like that. I like that. Yeah, I've been doing it. I try to do it at least once a year, but I think I may try to up it. I do for each business a retreat, and you know, it's just me. And I just basically I lock myself in my office. Now some of my colleagues they actually do it as a trip. And so that's something I'm thinking about doing this year is adding a trip to it. But I just lock myself in the office. I plan out the agenda ahead of time so that once I get in there, it's just get to work. And half of the day is like focusing on like bigger picture stuff. And then the second half of the day is like coming up with those action items of what I need to do next. So I do that. And then another thing is I know that there's certain seasons that are busy seasons. Like May is always insane for us. And so when I look at my calendar, like you talked about those long weekends, I block off days right behind busy seasons so that I know that even though I gotta tough it out, like like this little stretch is gonna be much more intense than my normal schedule. I can feel good about toughing it out because I know that behind it there is no obligations.
Mhm.
So yeah, I like that.
So I'll say that kind of fell off of my little ritual I gave everybody at that last conference. Um, so on how to prevent burnout. And so it turned into like going within and just figuring out what I needed. Like, what do I need at this moment? Um, and that's only because, like, life happened. Like I said, like I was floundering, trying to figure out what we were doing. And so I fell more into like, what do I need to do right now? So, I may sit there and like I'm gonna reward myself with like a glass of wine. No, actually, you really just need to clean your apartment because it looks like crazy. And this clutter is a lot, and you can't
Hmm.
think in clutter. Like, I know thine self be true. It's great. I can't think of clutter, and that makes me more anxious than trying to relax with a glass of wine. So, therefore, I do that. But I am doing much better at scheduling myself out. I think that a statement that they always say about like not idle hands, but like it's the statement that goes along with like when you don't have much to do, then your mind kind of wanders. And so
Hmm.
um I have actually pivoted a little to where I've picked up other work in being a wellness advisor, and I'm actually creating programs for different people on how to incorporate that into their lives. And it's made me busier, but it's also something that I absolutely like I've really enjoyed doing. So I don't find there to be I find it to be that nice stress, the happy stress. The good stress, I like to say, the good stress of just like, oh, like I actually really enjoy what I'm doing right now. Um, and so with that, it's forcing me to schedule myself, which is forcing me to get back on that balancing regimen that I've had of where it's like, okay, so I make sure that I take 20 minutes to myself a day, whatever that is, if that's de-stressing for my day, or maybe it could be my morning meditation. So it's just like I'm waking up and getting myself prepared. I make sure that like once a week I'm having 2, 3 hours of doing something that I like to do. That could turn into me being out in a park, doing some kind of grounding where I'm in the grass. It was too cold now this week, so that may turn into like let me go into like my little sewing. Um, and then once a month, I take my mental health day. So it's no work at all. It's just I do whatever the heck I want. No appointments, no nothing. I could I could rot in my bed. I can go to the pool if it's a warmer day. And then on the months where I and those happen on months where like I don't have some kind of vacation already scheduled. Um, I do like some kind of bigger thing, every other month. So it's so like I just took a week off in the beginning of the year as like part of like that Christmas holiday. So I'll just have like my self-care day the rest of the month. Um I'll do the same thing, just one little self-care day in February, and then we have like Mardi Gras, which I take a full week off anyway because don't nobody want to see their therapist or Mardi Gras. Yeah,
Maybe after.
maybe that's usually what happens. Like y'all, y'all revelried and partied and got a little bit too much, and then couples then start calling me like, he wild out. We gotta come and talk to you. And so that usually happens like right after Mardi Gras. Um, and so like I know I'm getting busy then. So that full week will be off, and that full week is me again resting, partying, looking at what needs to happen in the next quarter. How am I going to balance myself off? What I need to, revamp with the business and everything. And so yeah, do it all over again. And that has helped. I know it's helped me in the past of stuff that I've done of just like how do I stave off burnout? And it's just about like getting back on a horse. Just gotta get back on the horse. And then, when we need to get up the horse because life happens.
Yeah, that was, I feel like that was like the end of the year for me was like I planned November like an extrovert. And that was not good. And then, my cousin passed and then the holidays. And so like, once I got past like, I'm like the responsible adult of the family, so I had to like handle all of that stuff. So once I got past that, I was just like I told my other cousin, her brother, I was like, look, I'm off the clock. Like I am not responsible anymore. Like I am just going to do things that I feel like doing like until the new year and give me a couple of days into the new year. And then we can regroup. But yeah, that's that I had to get back on that horse and just to say to like the listeners, even once you kind of have these things in place, you still gotta, it's still a maintenance and it's still a practice and it's still, setting those boundaries and reminding yourself of what you're supposed to be doing and like regrouping. Sometimes you have to do that regroup.
Well, I think I might be the last one. I'll try to be succinct. I do massage and or stretch at least once a month with somebody else who's doing those things for me. I walk a lot. I like to be out in nature, and so I have to do that a few times a week. And I live in a place called River Walk, so there's literally a walk, like miles and miles of trails right next to a river, and so I really enjoy doing that. I don't ever schedule my Sundays. And then I'm done with whatever coaching I'm doing by 5 o'clock on Saturday. Because my regular job is really not, I say it's my 9 to 5. I should just call it my W-2 because it's not a 9 to 5. I'm vice president for student affairs at a university. Students meet at night and typically, on the weekends. Although I will say in South Carolina, they're very polite about Sundays. Typically, people don't schedule anything on Sunday. I may have one group through a foundation that schedules something one Saturday in April for a senior send-off. But otherwise, people don't touch Sundays. And so I do those things. And then, of course, I take some time to journal. And then my spiritual walk is really important. So I take time almost every day. I'm listening to something that reconnects me with my spiritual journey. And so for me, it's making sure that there's something that's included every day. And then as I telescope out and think about the year, there's always a women's retreat that I do in February. There's always my annual conference that I do in March. I always do something with my family in July for about a week. And then in December, there's always a 2-week vacation. And at least half of that time is spent at a beach. So a beach somewhere. It could be, within this state. So last year it was Charleston. This year it was Myrtle Beach. Sometimes it's outside of the country, the Bahamas. It just depends on how far away I feel like I need to run and how much energy I have for the running.
I love that. I love it. I love it. But I think a little bit of everything that you ladies have said works for me. Like I said, I try to get that self-care stuff on the calendar first, like before um people are thinking about scheduling my time, like so a quarter ahead or whatever. I try to like block off those like days and times just so that I already have those and they're like, honored and respected. Um, Birthdays, certain holidays, that it's like, and it's gonna be an act of Congress for you to get me to do something on those days and really treat it like I do a client appointment. Like I need my time as much as I need other people's to respect other people's time and also just paying attention to how I feel in a given moment. And, my biggest, like, get back on the horse sort of thing is when I know I'm feeling it. And sometimes when you're in the thick of it, you are kind of like at a point where you can't do anything about it in that moment. I always pull out that calendar and find out what is the next viable moment that I can have to myself and mark that off and just like And even in the midst of it, sometimes that do not disturb comes in handy. Like I'm about to turn this phone off for, an hour and just go sit and watch a show or go, take a nap or do whatever to like just pull myself away from what's going on. All right, ladies. We have had a wonderful conversation. I know that we could keep going, and there's so much wisdom, knowledge, honesty in this conversation. I greatly appreciate that. And I appreciate each of you for being guests this season, for coming on today and like just sharing and fellowshipping. Before we started, I said this is always like a therapy session of its own. Like, just outside of of course we're gonna, share it out, but I could just sit here and have had this conversation and been good. Um, but yeah, I respect each and every one of you and all the things that you are doing to change the world. And um, I wanna, for the listeners, build community. Build community. I love the beautiful community that this has become, because it every month, and now in 2025 I'm gonna be doing 2 guests a month, because that's how much this has grown. Each of you are sending, I'm getting emails. I'm like, okay, this is like, the list of all of these people that each of you have shared with me, um, as well as people that I'm meeting. And so it's just really growing, and to, just continue to each month, get to see a window into an amazing woman's world is like, it's just something that I have, in the midst of everything else, it's the one thing that I've been super consistent with. I mean, there's a handful of weeks that I might have missed because of, usually a very important reason. But I stay consistent with this for a reason, because I feel like a lot of times in the world, we don't believe that these women exist, that these communities exist, and they absolutely do. And I want you to all experience that. Also, just as business owners, sometimes we don't know who to turn to for what, when, why. And anybody that knows me well knows that I'm weird about people. And like, you got to pass the vibe test for me, and that's something about, your spirit and, how you carry yourself. And so, um, I don't bring people forward unless I feel that connection with them. And that means that these are people that you can trust. These are people that you can reach out to and say, hey, I want to know a little bit more about this. I need assistance in this area. These are people that you can go to. And, I feel very comfortable saying that they really care about what they do. They're not just doing something to do it. There is a passion behind what they do. So they are looking for your success. So again, thank you, ladies. I'm gonna give y'all an opportunity if y'all want. Anybody has any final thoughts before we wrap up, and then we're gonna close it out. Y'all all good? All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, listeners. And yes, we are celebrating 3 years. I didn't think, it was a whim. It was a whim. It wasn't an accident. But it was a whim. It was a whim, because I'm not using that word anymore. It was a whim that really, I absolutely fell in love with. So thank you guys. Thank you, listeners. And yeah, I'll see you guys next week with another guest episode. Thank you for listening to the Profits in Pajamas podcast. I hope you got some great tips to start working with ease. Want to stay connected? Follow me at Your Workflow on Instagram. For more information about building your luxury brand, register for my upcoming luxury brand workshop at CoachDanniD.com.